how to deal with a whole bunch of goals that you will have in life. And that one's really important. Of course, we'll get more into it during that slide, but stuff that I think that I mentioned last time a bit as well. When there are a whole lot of things that you've got to get done, well, that's pretty much all the time, right? And there are a couple of reasons that as people with ADHD, we have a bit of a tendency to want to take on extra things all at once, or to want to take on everything that we want to get done all at once to jump into it. So like that could be desire for novelty. That could be sometimes people like have an aversion to, if they've felt that they stagnated at times, then sometimes like people will like feel that or worry that if they let the momentum slow down enough, then they're just going to stagnate and not do anything, which is something that would, if that's the case for any of you guys, to find a way to experiment and disprove that to yourself would be a really, really good move as well. But it's just like, it's to take one on at a time, and then to get those wins, to get, like have it as small in time frame as it needs to be, so that you can get that win, you can celebrate it, and hopefully get spurred on to keep on doing more. And as your confidence builds, then your ability to get more and more things done and to handle more and more goals over time will increase. Like, so much to do with the blockage that we can experience as people with ADHD is actually due to that feeling incapable. And the only way to really turn that around, that I've come across at least, is by experiment. Because like the prefrontal cortex, where we're thinking with language, we need to remember that that's not the whole brain, that's not the whole show. That feeling of intuition, the feeling that something, like the hindbrain is able to do, frankly, a hell of a lot more than the prefrontal cortex can do. They work well in conjunction with one another, but like if the hindbrain is essentially like driven by the fear that we might not be able to complete the task because of experiences in the past where we've wanted to and yet not enacted it, that the more of that, the more we kind of build toward this idea, like things feel more daunting because they're not tied with the idea that we can handle it. And so that's definitely something to keep our eye on. Rebuilding routines when life happens and they fall apart, because, and like it really does need to, a lot of people with ADHD will kind of, when talking about goals, they'll say something like I know that I can do it for some small amount of time. I'm sure that sure that some of you thought this last week. Like, I know that I can do it for some amount of time, and it's just that consistency. And as I explained last week, it's proving that we can be consistent in anything is really important, and it gets easier after that. But you can't disprove a negative. So the negative just being like the lack of, at some stage, adherence to the goal or adherence to consistency. The fact is, for neurotypical people and ADHD and people with ADHD alike, sometimes things are going to get in the way and everything's going to fall apart. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily like other situations that you've been in where things have fallen apart. It's that this curious mind approach, to this self-compassionate way of reviewing our goals. This is one way to kind of get our head around like what caused the lack of adherence to my goal, and to think about all the kind of reasonable questions around that, like we might do if we were an experimenter, or if we were helping somebody else to figure out what might have got in the way of them achieving what they wanted to. Because it's not always the same. It's not always something that is necessarily even avoidable. Sometimes things just come up.